Sometimes we make some poor choices in boating, just like some of the things we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is a wild one that is actually making national headlines, where this was the scene just a little over a week ago when the Coast Guard received a call about 3 overdue fishermen who had not returned. The incident occurred off the coast of Louisiana. The 3 fishermen had set out to go red snapper fishing near an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. They actually had their vessel tied to the oil rig when all of a sudden conditions drastically turned. The vessel began to take waves over the bow and the stern of the boat, quickly overwhelming the vessel and capsizing it, throwing our 3 fishermen into the water. Fortunately, all 3 of them actually had quick access to life jackets, and they also were able to quickly grab 3 ice chests, tie them together, and make a makeshift raft to help them stay afloat. Unfortunately, this crew was not able to get any kind of message out that they had capsized, so they were stuck in the water with no sign of help. The crew initially tried to swim back toward the oil platform. Unfortunately, the wind and waves pushed them away and they were unable to fight it. The crew got stuck in the water overnight, and during the evening had some unwelcome visitors, and 2 of the crew members actually suffered some minor hand injuries as they had to fight a shark off throughout the evening. During the morning hours, they spotted a shrimping trawler off in the distance. One of the members decided to leave the group and try and swim to that trawler. He pulled his phone out to try and get bearings on their location, and all of a sudden realized he had received a text message somehow throughout the evening. The man quickly screenshotted his location and texted a friend to let him know the trouble they were in. This friend then contacted the Coast Guard, who was able to send out rescue equipment and get the men pulled from the water after 28 hours of being stranded. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up to Maryland, where this was the scene just a few weeks ago when the newly launched USS Minneapolis St. Paul was visiting Baltimore's Inner Harbor during Maryland Fleet Week a few weeks back, as well as the Danish sailing vessel Denmark that can be seen in the distance here, when the vessels thought it might be a good idea to get a little closer look at each other. And things obviously got a little too close for comfort, and the Danish sailing vessel decided to leave its mark on the US naval vessel. Fortunately, no injuries were reported during the incident, and the damage was mostly minor superficial things, and since both ships were in port, repairs were able to begin almost immediately after the incident. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us off the US coast and across the globe to Taiwan, where this was the scene just a few days ago when 19 crew members were rescued by the Coast Guard from a South Korean product tanker that was taking on water in the Taiwan Strait. The vessel's the South Korean registered Kelsey 2, and they radioed for assistance on October 15th after the vessel began to take on water. And as can be seen from these video images here, by the time the Coast Guard arrived, this vessel was in serious distress, as it can be seen listing and waves crashing across the deck of the vessel. The Coast Guard was able to successfully airlift 19 crew members off the vessel and take them to safety. A preliminary report shows that the vessel began taking on water approximately 24 hours prior to the scene here. The crew did try and identify what was causing the 394-foot tanker to take on water, but were unable to successfully do so. The vessel was last known location approximately 25 miles south of Taiwan. Unfortunately, it is reported that the vessel did eventually capsize and wind up sinking. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us off to the coast of Mississippi, where an interesting subject comes up, which is assist versus evacuate. Some people don't even realize the Coast Guard does this, but in certain situations, if your vessel is still operational and taking on water, the Coast Guard would rather lower dewatering pumps to your vessel, help you get them set up to try and salvage the vessel and get you safely back to port versus just abandoning ship, which is the exact situation we are witnessing here when this past week a 75-foot shrimping vessel sent a message to the Coast Guard that they were taking on water approximately 51 miles off the coast of Pascagoula, Mississippi. Here it can be seen where the Coast Guard crews lowered 2 dewatering pumps down to the vessel. They've helped the crew set them up, and the crew was able to continue on their voyage safely back to port versus abandoning ship. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Fort Lauderdale, and it is that time again. We are exactly 1 week away from the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show, one of the largest boat shows in the world. For those who do plan attending, just a reminder, this event no longer sells tickets on site. You must purchase your tickets in advance digitally online. I'll leave a link in the description below to Flib's website where you can purchase your tickets. And we will be attending this event this year as well. We'll be participating in 2 separate events on Saturday, October 29th. The first one will be at the Bahamas booth on the Bahia Marside from 2 to 3 p.m. where they'll be hosting a happy hour sponsored by Staniel K Yacht Club and Maker's Air. Feel free to stop by there and join us in an island-inspired drink. Then at 4 o'clock on Saturday, October 29th, we'll be over at the Convention Center hosting a seminar in collaboration with the Bahamas Tourism ministry on how to take your boat to the Bahamas. We do a Bahamas trip every year. Last year, we actually had 40 vessels join us, and this is a great way to find out how to take your boat to the Bahamas, or maybe even how to join us on our trip in 2023. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening on your waterways, be sure to hit me up on Facebook or Instagram and let me know, and you might see your stories over here. Just like Matt Garnivores, Juan Alvarez, Michael Bricking, and David Klein did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here. If not, we're coming to steal your drain plug.